Hey guys, and welcome to October's House, the place where we talk all TV, cinema, and horror. So recently they just wrapped up CinemaCon, and that's a huge deal for anyone that's in the cinema. If you don't know what it is, it's a big convention where they get all the major studios to do these big presentations on any upcoming movies that they have. We usually get a lot of announcements and a lot of new news from these presentations, and it's always something to keep your eye on. The convention is mainly for like cinema companies and like owners, but it is open to the public as well. Just the pricing of the tickets is absolutely ridiculous if you're not a member of certain trade organizations, and even then they're still pretty pricey. I think they go from anywhere between like $700 to $2,000. So it's all fairly exclusive and it's kept within the industry rather than the fans. But as I said, we get a lot of new news from this, so I thought as a horror channel, what I would do is pick out all the horror news, all the bits that we would be interested in as horror fans, and condense it into one video. So we'll be going studio by studio, going through all the presentations and picking out all the horror news from CinemaCon 2025. So I will be talking a bit about the footage shown as well, which can kind of go into spoilers, but I won't be talking about anything too big, and I will give warning anyway if I do. So let's get into it. So Sony kicked off the convention with a 2-hour presentation. First, we learned about a new Resident Evil reboot directed by Zach Cregger, which is slated for a September 18th, 2026 release. It's also led by Austin Abrams, and it was said that this movie is going to be unlike any of the previous movies, and that this reboot is really going to try and harness the feeling of the games. Next up, we have a movie called Grand Gear, directed by Takashi Yamasaki of Godzilla Minus One. Now, this was slated more as a sci-fi movie, but it was all very mysterious, and there wasn't much information given about this at all. And I thought it was worth mentioning with the Godzilla connection. And it's also produced by Bad Robot, which kind of means that everybody's speculating that it's a Cloverfield movie. This one isn't under Paramount though, which I believe have the rights to Cloverfield at the moment. So no. Going into some more solid stuff though, there was a new trailer shown for 28 Years Later, and according to reports it was quite similar in tone to the first trailer, and it showed Aaron Taylor-Johnson's character showing his son how to defend the town from the zombies. But there is one shot that I want to make note of. Take this with a grain of salt, because I had to read it a couple of times because I was like, wait, that can't be right. But apparently one of the zombies talks and is talking about Judgment Day. So, yeah, unless I've completely misread that, that's a really interesting direction that they can take the movie in. And I'm really excited to see more of this world and see where it is now 20 years on. And to expand on that, the audience was also treated to a sneak peek of the second movie in the 28 Years Later trilogy, The Bone Temple. Now, there was no footage shown, even though they were shot back to back. There was just 2 stills shown, and one was just a bunch of survivors running through a forest, but the second was Ralph Fiennes' character looking absolutely crazy, naked, covered in wounds. It really seems like they're setting him up to be the big bad of the trilogy, and they said that they were really excited for us to meet this character. Next up, they gave some news and showed a trailer for I Know What You Did Last Summer. I think that there was a poster that was released simultaneously, if not before, the presentation that we got publicly. But the trailer that was shown showed Madeline Klein's character taking a bath while her boyfriend gets murdered by a killer with a fisherman's hook. And then there's a group of teenage characters that are all discussing whether what happened has something to do with what happened last summer. Freddie Prinze Jr. and Jennifer Love Hewitt also show up. It's giving full requel, but according to the descriptions, this did have a very brutal and kind of like darker tone, so hopefully that'll allow it to stand out amongst the many requels of slashers that we've got over the last couple of years. So that's it for Sony, and now we're moving on to Lionsgate. They had a mountain of John Wick stuff to show us, but we're obviously sticking to the horror here. Straight off the bat, Neon gave a presentation of 2 trailers, and the first one was The Life of Chuck, which is an adaptation of a Stephen King book. This one isn't strictly horror, But, as I said, it's a Stephen King adaptation and it's directed by Mike Flanagan. So I thought it was definitely of note, and I do know that the story kind of plays with genre a bit. I couldn't actually find a description of the footage, just that it looked great. Also, the cast is astronomically stacked. There's too many to list, so I'll put them up on screen, but oh my god, this cast is incredible. I don't think it'll be too long until we get the full trailer publicly, but this one does seem really nice, really beautiful, and I'm excited to see where the weirdness comes in. So straight after that, they showed a new trailer for the Alison Brie and Dave Franco-led body horror Together. Now, we already had a trailer for this, and it absolutely looks insane. But from what I've heard, the trailer shown at CinemaCon took it to a whole other level. Apparently the body horror is absolutely wild and the jump scares are really innovative. It's directed by Michael Shanks, but it looks like the demon baby of Lars von Trier and Ari Aster. This movie looks so good. And I really hope that we get this CinemaCon trailer publicly soon, because I'm really excited to see how fucking crazy this one's going to get. I marked that one down because that's coming out the 21st of August. Next up, we have another Stephen King adaptation, and it's not even the last one in this video, but this one's The Long Walk. It's about a televised event where 100 teenage boys are made to walk. There's no finish line, they just have to keep walking, and if they go under 3 miles per hour, they get executed. And the descriptions of the footage that was shown kind of just sound like that, to be honest. But it does seem like it's shot really nicely and it's going to have a really cool tone. I've not read the book, so I'm a bit skeptical of this, and I'm really hoping that we get to see some footage publicly very soon, because I kind of want to make my own mind up about how this is kind of going to translate into a feature-length movie. But yeah, September 12th, that one's coming out. They also gave a little update on the new American Psycho. Not much was said, but the director basically told the audience that they are working on a script and it's nearly done and it's looking good. And they're deep into the casting process of Patrick Bateman. He also said that this isn't a remake of the film, but a brand new separate adaptation of the book. So at least there's that. So that's it for Lionsgate. They didn't mention Saw at all. And while I wasn't really expecting it, especially since Saw 11 got taken off the scheduling, I feel like it was like a last hope kind of thing, that they would go, oh, by the way, Saw 11 is still alive, we're just kind of working some stuff out. But they didn't say that, so to me, that's the last nail in the coffin. And if you're interested in what happened with Saw 11, definitely hit the subscribe button, because I'm currently working on a video of that, kind of timelining everything from Saw 10 onwards, to really try and dig a bit deeper and find out exactly what happened. Next up, we have Warner Brothers, and their presentation was pretty big, with them having DC, but we do have a couple of horrors that were mentioned too. To start off, Ryan Coogler gave a little bit of a video presentation talking about Sinners. He mostly talked about the influences of the movie and said that they was influenced by the blues. If you've watched the trailer, that was like pretty obvious and pretty blatant, so nothing new there, and they kind of brushed past this movie quite quickly. But after this, they did talk about The Bride, and now, when I first heard about this movie, I wasn't too excited, because essentially it was described to me as Frankenstein's monster and The Bride of Frankenstein in a kind of Jared Leto, Margot Robbie, Joker, Harley Quinn dynamic. And I was like, yeah, that's not it. It's just not it. But there was some footage shown here, and from what I've heard, it was phenomenal. The footage consists of the monster smashing someone's head into a wall in an alleyway. Apparently it was ridiculously violent, it was really graphic, and it was really brutal, and the tone and the look of the movie is really gritty. So, you know what? They've turned me around on this movie. I'm in. Let's go. There was a few clips shown in a sizzle of Mortal Kombat 2, but nothing too substantial. but I will say that the general reception was apparently positive. Now, one of the meatier things that they showed was Final Destination Bloodlines. Of course, we did our full-length trailer very recently, and I've done a reaction of it if you want to go check that out. But here they gave a full 10-minute scene, and this one does toe the line of spoilers, so if you want to skip past this, just skip to the next timestamp. But it shows Eric, the hot character, and his brother Bobby in a hospital trying to figure out how to cheat death. The interesting thing about this is that they already know the rules. They know that if you kill someone, you can take their life, or you can either flatline and be resuscitated. I'm assuming that they know this from the book that we saw in the trailer. Apparently there is a kind of like side eye where they discuss killing a baby, but then they're like, wait, no, what are we doing? But then they decide that, I think Bobby is the one with a peanut allergy, that they're going to send him into anaphylactic shock and then him be resuscitated. So they go to get like peanuts out of a vending machine. If I said any more, it will go a bit too far into spoilers and kind of spoil one of the kills. So I won't go like too deep in there. And I've seen from multiple sources that it's really funny, but also really gory. So I'm even more excited somehow than I was before for this movie. So next up is a movie that I believe was announced not long ago, but we didn't have any information on it whatsoever. But it's another Zach Cregger's movie, and it's called Weapons. A trailer was shown, and it's about a group of kids from one class that goes missing at 2:17 a.m. Apparently it's incredible. It looks really good, and it looks insane. So this one's definitely one to keep on the radar. It was penned for a 2026 release, but it got moved up to the 8th of August this year. So yeah, make sure you keep an eye out for that one. So the next movie that was talked about was Conjuring 4, and I was so excited to hear some more information about this one. I was really hoping for a trailer, but no, there was no trailer shown. However, there was some footage shown in a sizzle reel along with like Mortal Kombat and some other movies apparently. And now, I don't know how credible this is, due to it just being a sizzle reel kind of footage, but apparently there was a villain shown from Conjuring 4 that is absolutely terrifying. So I'm really like got my fingers crossed, hoping that that's true. I love Valak and I love the Nun, but I think, you know, having a new kind of face for the new movie and the last movie is going to be really cool. They did say that it has been testing really positive as well, which is really good to hear. And another thing that I have to address that was said at CinemaCon about The Conjuring is that this movie is the end of phase 1. People are going kind of crazy over this. I don't think it means exactly what it sounds like. I just think that it means that with this movie they're kind of closing one chapter of the universe, and then going forward we might have some new faces and some new villains. So yeah, I don't think it's anything to get too crazy over. Plus it was also said that phase 2 is TBD, so I mean, yeah, it doesn't really mean anything. And now we're getting on to Universal, and as you guys probably know, Blumhouse is under Universal, so we're getting a lot of horror stuff in this one, but there is one movie that I need to note before moving on to the Blumhouse stuff, and that's a new film called Him, produced by Jordan Peele. But from what I've heard, this has his fingerprints like pretty heavily on it. And I'm a bit torn with this one, because with Jordan Peele's name on it, I'm ready. I love Jordan Peele so much. However, this is being labeled as a sports horror movie. Anyone that knows me personally knows that sports is probably like my least favorite thing. I love watching skating films, but aside from that, like soccer, football, and basketball are just so far from what I want to watch a film about. But it stars Marlon Wayans as a retired football star coaching a young player and doing whatever it takes to achieve success. And I do say that in an ominous tone because it does seem like this one's going to be really dark. According to the descriptions of the footage, it kind of gives Whiplash, but with satanic rituals. So that's got me intrigued, I'm not gonna lie. Also, Julia Fox is cast in this one, and I feel like that one was for the girlies. It's kind of giving the straight AHS. I could do without the sports stuff, but in Pure we trust. Okay, so on to the Blumhouse stuff. I'm sure you guys have already heard about this one by now, but that's Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Jason Blum came out in a full Freddy costume. And they showed off a sizzle reel for the movie and then straight after dropped a teaser online. And I can't quite seem to figure out whether the teaser that they dropped online was what they shown at the presentation. But from what I can gather, they were at least very, very similar. I'm not a massive fan of Five Nights at Freddy's. I never played the game, but I did do a bunch of research on the lore, so I was ready for the first movie. And I did see it when it came out, and it was okay for me. It wasn't anything like too exciting, but this one does seem like it's stepping up in intensity. The one complaint that I've seen a lot of people make with this movie is that they've taken them out of the restaurant. But I mean, it's a movie franchise. We're not going to get a shot-by-shot adaptation of the games, you know. I think with this one, there is a case of maybe there being like two audiences. I think that there's the people that like horror movies and then the younger audience that like the game. And while there's definitely a lot of crossover in those two audiences, I can kind of see there being some polarizing opinions when this one comes out. Next, they talked about The Black Phone 2, and I'm so excited for this movie. I've been dying to find out more about this, and I love the first one. And I'm insanely jealous of CinemaCon because they got a full trailer for this movie. Unfortunately, this one wasn't released publicly, and I'm a bit disappointed about that. It's had some really positive reception so far, though, from what I've heard. From the descriptions of the footage, the grabber comes back as like a spirit in this one and haunts all of the kids in the town, especially Finney, obviously, and Finney's like talking to him through a payphone. I've seen loads of comparisons to Nightmare on Elm Street, which gets me so excited because it doesn't look like we're going to get any Nightmare films anytime soon, so this could definitely fill that void for the time being. Again, according to the descriptions, this one seems a bit more intense, a bit less subtle, and a bit more bloody, which really gets me excited, and I'm just praying that they publicly drop the trailer soon. And then they moved on to Megan. Apparently for this presentation, they brought out a bunch of dancers dressed as Megan. It was all really fun. It was all a little bit stupid and a little bit camp. And they showed the trailer that they dropped online with it as well. I've seen it. It looks fun. And that's all I can kind of really say about it at this point. It seems like they've completely dropped the horror, and that's a little bit sad. But as I predicted, they leaned into the yassification of Megan, and it seems like it's gone full action comedy. A lot of people are saying it's the girly pop Terminator 2, which I absolutely can see that. Honestly, I liked the first film. I didn't love it, but I definitely enjoyed it. And I am a little bit disappointed to see that this is the direction that they're going in. You know, it's gonna have its audience, it's gonna have its fan, people are gonna love this, but it's not quite for me. However, staying with the Megan universe, they brought out James Wan and talked about the spin-off, which is coming next year, Soulmate. This one I'm actually a lot more excited for. They did show some footage of this, and it was described as very bloody, very violent. So I'm really excited about that. We knew before CinemaCon that they were doing this movie, and we knew that they were going the whole like erotic thriller kind of vibe with it, and it just seems so fun to me. However, it does seem to kind of have the exact same plot as Megan. If you just swap out the little girl who just lost her parents and needs a best friend for a grown man who just lost his wife and needs a companion. See what I did there? Because it's also getting a lot of comparisons to Companion. I do think that it's just unfortunate timing, though. I believe that they were probably in development at the same time, Soulmate, if not before. But I am hoping this film can give me what I'm missing from Megan 2.0. And that was the end of Blumhouse, but I do want to mention something else that Universal talked about, and that is a new Steven Spielberg movie that is coming out in 2026. It's untitled, though I have seen some people refer to it as The Disc, so I don't know if that's a working title, but this is fully sci-fi, but we know Steven Spielberg has dipped his toes in horror before, so I definitely think this one was worth mentioning, because honestly at this point it could be anything. It would be really cool if we got a really creepy and dark, like classic alien sci-fi story, but we'll have to wait and see with this one. So there was an Amazon and MGM presentation, but there was absolutely nothing of horror in there, so we're just going to go straight on to Paramount. And I will say at this point, the horror stuff really slowed down, but I do have a few extra things to mention. So Paramount gave a first look at another Stephen King adaptation called The Running Man. This one is directed by Edgar Wright, so I'm on board already, let's go. But the thing is, this one sounds very similar to The Long Walk. I've heard this one also be compared to The Hunger Games. This one more so, if anything. But instead of it being a televised walking competition, it's a televised hunting competition. They brought out Josh Brolin, Glenn Powell, and Coleman Domingo to talk about this one, and they also had some footage shown. Apparently it's really gory, and it's a bit more actiony, but it's a Stephen King adaptation, so I thought I'd give it a mention. So Scream 7 was also mentioned in the Paramount presentation, very quickly, very briefly, and we had absolutely no new information. They did show a cast photo, I believe, but that's pretty much what we already kind of knew. But we did get an official logo. And they also said something along the lines of Sidney Prescott is back with old suspects and new faces, or something like that, or new victims. I can't remember the exact quote. I'll put it up on screen so we can actually get the quote. But yeah, interesting way of words there. I wasn't surprised that we didn't get much. I was maybe thinking that we might have gotten a teaser from this, but no. With most Scream films, they try to keep it as under wraps as they can, but I think this one especially so, with some of the casting announcements that we've got recently. I think that they're going to do maybe a big format twist with this one, so I think they're trying to keep it all secret, so it's a big surprise for us. And that's all that was mentioned in Paramount, so we're going to move on to the last panel, which is Disney. And I don't think many people were expecting much horror to come out of Disney, but they do have some IPs that are in the realm of horror. However, only one of them was mentioned, and that is the new Predator movie called Predators Badlands. This one's coming out on the 7th of November, and they did show a trailer, so maybe we'll get that soon publicly. That'll be really exciting. Dan Trachtenberg is coming straight over from Prey, which is really awesome. And we learned that there's going to be a bit of a flip in the dynamic in this movie, with the Predator kind of being the protagonist. So that sounds fun. And that's it. That's everything that horror fans learned from this year's CinemaCon. I hope that some of the footage that was shown and the trailers that haven't been released publicly yet do get a release very soon, especially that Black Phone one. I'm dying to see it. This was a lot to get through, and this was a lot to sift through, and honestly, about halfway through, I got so burnt out. So that's why it's coming a little bit later than I wanted it to. I did want to maybe release it like a day or two after CinemaCon. So if you managed to, stick with me through all of this, I do really appreciate it. If there's anything that I've missed or that isn't horror related that you think is really exciting or really fun to talk about, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button, because it's a tiny thing, but it really does help the channel. And subscribe for more horror content. I'm going to be doing so much more, as I've got an Opus review in the works. I've got that Saw 11 timeline coming, and I'm going to be doing some more deep dives and just ranking videos and all of that stuff. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.